My my studies in the Western sciences has been in aerospace engineering, in the space sciences, in understanding astronomy and exploring the exploration of space. And because of that, I had a lot of interest in the Indian knowledge systems aspect of it, where we have the astronomy of our ancestors, the Jyotiṣaśāstra, and how these two interplay and how they connect. So that is the topic of today, of trying to understand Jyotisha and why this Shastra is of relevance and of importance today. Now, before I begin, I must give a disclaimer that everything that is being presented today is a product of my research from reading the Shastras and from learning from various acharyas and reading and listening to various acharyas. But nothing presented here represents the view of the United States government or NASA. I must give that disclaimer. So it is a product of my own research. So we'll go ahead and get started, and I will share my screen. Okay. And yes, please feel free to ask any questions as we go along. Okay. Is the slideshow visible? Okay. So Jyotisha, why astronomy of the ancient past is relevant today. So the first question many people get, especially if all you know about Jyotisha is from just like what you read in the newspapers or just whatever is culturally commonly known, is, what do you mean astronomy? Isn't Jyotisha some, hocus pocus astrology, something that someone's just doing to scam you? So it is an often question that comes up on this topic. So to motivate this presentation, we'll give a situation for us to think about. Consider that you're doing any activity. Since this is targeted towards the yuva, something that's common on many of our minds is, you're studying for an exam or you're preparing for an interview or something like that, right? When you're preparing for some kind of activity, do the time and place that you study or you do your preparation affect the results? The answer should be yes. Some people will say that, studying in the morning will give you very good results versus studying at midnight, cramming the night before the session will not give you good results. The location will make a difference too. If you're studying in a quiet library versus in a noisy environment, that will affect the results. So yes, the time, the kala, and place, the desha, affect the results of the activity that you are performing. Therefore, the next question that should naturally arise is, what time and what place are most conducive to obtaining the best results? It's an optimization problem, right? So how can you best determine this? So this is the purpose of Jyotiṣa as a Vedāṅga. Its purpose is to provide guidance as to when and where to perform an action. So how do we know when and where? How do we measure when and where? Time and location are always specified with respect to celestial bodies and their motions. For example, if you want to specify a location here on Earth, you will give latitude, longitude, and altitude, right? If you are thinking about time, you will specify years and days or months, right? Years and days are specified by Earth's motion around the sun and Earth's rotation around its own axis. The months are based off the moon's revolution around the Earth, right? So all time fundamentally is based off some kind of natural celestial body that is rotating and moving. Therefore, the best time and place to perform an action is also necessarily a function of the celestial bodies and their motions. So Jyotisha itself, the name comes from Jyotihi, which is the natural lights that exist, the stars, the sun, anything that reflects light, for example, the planets. So that's where the term comes from, and that's how it's related to the celestial bodies. And in fact, in the original text of Jyotisha, which is called Vedāṅga Jyotiṣa by the Maharshi Lagadha, the Maharshi very specifically calls Jyotisha as Kala Vidhana Shastram and Ganitam. Kala Vidhana Shastram is that which is the science of timekeeping, methodology of keeping time, and Ganitam, that which is computed, that which is calculated. So these two terms that are called out should hint to us that there is some methodology, there is some mathematics, there is some science behind Jyotiṣa. And in fact, in the third Vakya of the Vedāṅga Jyotiṣa, this is exactly what Lagadha Maharshi says. Veda hi yajñārthamabhipravruttaah kālānupurvya vihitāscha yajñāh tasmādidam kālavidhāna-śāstram yo jyotiṣam veda sa veda yajñān. So what does it mean? Veda hi yajñārtham abhipravruttaah. The Vedas, why are they in existence? What is the purpose of the Vedas? The main purpose, we have the Karmakanda and Jnanakanda. Karmakanda makes up 90-something% of the Veda. The main purpose is yajñārtham, to do yajña. And for yajña, we can take it to mean just any karma, any action that is to be done. That is the purpose of Veda, to tell us what to do and when to do it. Okay? So when it comes to these yajñas or these karmas, kālānupurvya vihitāscha yajñāha. The yajñas are kālānupurvya. So Anupurvi, if anyone who has studied Samskritam will know, when you're doing very basic Vyakarana, you're taking a shabda and breaking down into the different aksharas that make it up, right? The Anupurvi, that when we do that breakup, right? It is the same thing. Anupurvi is like an order, a sequence that you're given. And so Kālānupurvya vihitāscha yajñāha means all the yajñas, all the karmas that are specified with respect to time. There's a time that you need to do them, and of course, place as well. Tasmat, therefore, Yaha Jyotiṣam Veda, the one who knows this Jyotiṣam. What is this Jyotiṣam? Idam Kala Vidhana Shastram. This Jyotiṣam, which is the methodology of timekeeping. Therefore, Yaha Jyotiṣam Veda, Saha Veda Yajñan. The one who knows Jyotiṣam, therefore, truly understands the purpose of the yajña, why you're doing it, and what results you might get out of doing the said karma. So to know the results of your actions, or to help motivate that, you need to know when to do what, is essentially the point here. So, okay, this is fine, but where do the Vedas, where do Vedāṅgas, how do all of these come together? What is the structure of Shastra in which all of these come together? So to talk about that, let me stop my screen share and switch over to a different slide deck real quick so we can talk about this in just a little bit of detail. So a very brief Shastra Marga Darshanam, a very brief roadmap of how our Shastras are structured. And so this will help motivate why Jyotiṣa developed as a Vedāṅga. Okay, so from Sanatana Dharma standpoint, our ultimate Purushartha, ultimate goal is moksha, some kind of notion of liberation. Now, which sampradaya you belong to, how you define that will depend, but moksha. What is the ultimate problem that we're trying to get out of? To be liberated, what are we being liberated from? Ajnana, or Maya. So how do you solve it? It is through jnana, knowledge. But it's not just textbook knowledge, right? You can give the Upadesha Vakya from the Upanishads, but tat tattvamasi. But just because you know that doesn't mean you really have realized, right? So what we really need is vijnana. That it is not just a textbook knowledge, but an experiential and an intuitive knowledge, which is what is needed. So how do you go from jnana to vijnana? It requires what is called chitta shuddhi, a clean and pure mind. The antakarana that we have must be purified. How do we do that? It is karma done in the karma yoga bhava that achieves the chitta shuddhi. So we just had Bhagavad Gita Jayanti very recently. And so this is exactly what Bhagavan Shri Krishna talks about in the Gita. Okay, so how do we do this? So the very first instructions given to the sadhaka on this path onto moksha is, for example, Shankara Bhagavad gives in the Sadhana Panchakam. The very first instructions are Vedo nityamadhiyatam taduditam karmasvanushthiyatam tene shasya vidhiyatam apachiteh kamye matistyajyatam. Vedo nityam adhiyatam. Study the Vedas daily. Then tene tadutitam karmasvanushthiyatam. Diligently perform all the karma, all the yajnas, all the karma that is ordained in the Veda. Then dedicate that karma as your own worship onto Bhagavan, and then to renounce all desires in your mind. But the very first two are what are most important to us today, right now, in this presentation. You must study Veda daily and to perform the karma that is mentioned in the Veda. Remember, we talked about Jyotiṣa. What is the purpose of Jyotiṣa? It is to know when to do what karma that is specified in Veda. Okay, so what is the structure of Veda? There are four main vibhagas vibhajana that is done by Vyasa Maharshi when the Maharshi had done this compilation of all the Vedic traditions into like one set of corpus text. Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda, each of which has three components to it, the Samhita, Brahmana, Aranyaka. There's also the Upanishads, but they are subcomponents within the Aranyaka, so within the Brahmana. So they're in there, but they're not like a separate thing per se. Okay, so how do we understand what's in Veda? Shankara Bhagavad in the Viveka Chudamani says, Shabdajalam Maharanyam Chitta Brahmana Karanam. The corpus of Shastra, it's a dense force that is very easily confusing, that very easily confuses us. And so we need help in trying to parse and understand what is actually in Veda. Therefore, a set of 6 Shastras called the Vedāṅgas were established to help the student understand and develop the basic necessities so that the student can go and understand what is said in Veda. These are Shiksha, which is phonetics, Nirukta, etymology, Chandas, which is prose, prosody, the meters, poetic meters, things like that, Vyakarana, grammar, Kalpa, which are various practices and procedures, and finally, what is of importance today is Jyotiṣa, astronomy. So this is how the Shastra is structured and why the connection between Veda and Jyotiṣa and why that exists comes from here. Any questions so far? Astu. Then I will switch back so we can continue talking about Jyotiṣa. Okay, so we talked about this quote. Jyotiṣa is Kala Vidhana Shastram, the science of timekeeping. So the fundamental core component of Jyotiṣa is what we call Siddhanta. It is the astronomy and mathematics that were developed so that we can keep track of the celestial bodies and their motions so we can tell time from them. However, over time, Jyotiṣa has evolved into what we now today know as Triskandha Jyotiṣa. There are 3 limbs to it, the foundation being Siddhanta, but what has now come to be called a Samhita, which is a collection of various topics that are there, and Hora, which is what we today most often associate with when we say the word Jyotiṣa. It is Hora that we're usually referring to, which is the predictive, quote-unquote, astrology, muhurta, things like that. So in today's presentation, we will talk a little bit about Hora and its motivation, the philosophical underpinnings of Hora. And in the second part, we'll actually go back and look through all the mathematics and science in Siddhanta and actually understand the scientific underpinnings of Jyotiṣa as a Shastra. So Hora for today, we'll talk a little bit about. So a common set of questions that occur to us when we talk about Hora and predictiveness and all of that. How can a planet's position affect me? Jupiter, Guru Graha is somewhere over there. How does that affect where I am? What am I doing right now? How can you actually foretell the future? And, I had someone check my Jataka and there was some dosha, something came up. Should I be worried? These are common questions that will come. So in an attempt to understand the motivations of these questions, we will delve deeper. Here is a very nice motivating example. Suppose that someone has fallen sick, right? It's entering winter time. There's some kind of bug going around. People are falling sick pretty often these days. What is the cause of the sickness? The answer depends on who you ask. If you ask a Western trained physician, they will say that it is some infection caused by virus or bacteria, something like that has caused your infection. That is the cause of your sickness. If you ask a psychologist, they will say you had some kind of emotional disturbance that added some stress to your body, that weakened your immune system, etc., something like that, right? If you ask an Ayurvedi, they will say there's some imbalance of the doshas, Pitta, Kapha, and Vata. within your body. There's some imbalance there that caused the sickness. If you ask a karma siddhantin, they will say it is your past papa karma that you have done that is fructifying now. If you ask a Jyotishika, they'll say it's some graha dosha that you have. Jupiter's over here, Saturn's over there, something like that. Okay, fine. Which is it? Which of these answers is correct? So the Vedantin will say that we will not disagree with any of these answers. All of these are different expressions and effects of the same circumstance, the same fundamental cause. And perhaps the Karma Siddhantin is the closest correct to being correct. It is following the law of karma that whatever karma you have done, it must fructify into a phala. And the karma phaladata, as we know, is Ishvara. And imagine this, it is an unimaginably massive optimization problem. For every jiva that has ever existed and ever will exist, for every karma they have done, how does the phala come about? And knowing when the karma will come about and where to get it, and for each jiva that has ever existed, it is an unimaginably massive optimization problem that only Ishvara can do, right? We also know that everything in this jagat is interconnected. We have the example of the butterfly effect that everyone is familiar with. Butterfly flaps its wing in one place and that causes a tornado down the line in some faraway desha, right? Yes, there is a connection there, but we generally do not have enough knowledge to infer the signal from the noise. There's so many unknowns. There's so many things that we just do not have the fundamental models to understand the cause to effect. And in terms of understanding cause to effect, Bhagavan Shri Krishna in the Gita talks about what are the 5 causes for an action to fructify. Panchaitani mahabaho karanani nibodhame sankhye kritante proktani siddhaye sarvakarmanam. What are the 5? Adhishtanam tatha karta karanam cha pratak vidham vividha cha pratak cheshtaha daivam chaivatra panchamam. The first is adhishtanam, the basis, the foundation. What is the circumstance you are working in? What is the environment you're working in? Then tatha karta, karta, the doer. Who are you as a jiva? Who's the one doing the action? Then karanam, pratak vidam karanam. What are the various instruments that you are using to do said action? Then vividaha pratak cheshtaha. What are the different processes that are involved in this action? And then the last one, Daivam Chaivatra Panchamam. The 5th one is Daivam, the one that we don't have any control about. That is up to Ishvara as the Karma Phaladata, right? The thing that we do not have control over that is there. So it is trying to understand this Daivam that is a very hard thing to do. And Acharya once said that, stock market predictors and then astrologers and then like weathermen and weatherwomen, they all make a business on trying to understand Daiva, is what an Acharya once told me. So we are trying to explore what is this Daiva, because everything else we have a generally good idea about when we're doing some action. We know the environment we're in, we know who's doing it, what are the instruments, and what are the processes that are involved. Okay, so we had mentioned that everything in Jagat is interconnected, but we don't generally have enough knowledge of everything to infer that signal from the noise. So the motivation of Hora Jyotiṣa is the take that it has is that, hey, the motion of celestial bodies are perhaps the most stable things that we have on the timescales we're interested in, right? The orbit of Jupiter, it does change, orbit of the Earth, all of these planets, they do change, but they change very slowly on the timescales we are interested in, that is, of the human lifespan, right? Therefore, perhaps there can be some kind of relatively clear signal in the noise when something has a very stable repetition pattern to it that we can read. So the purpose of Jyotiṣa, of Hora Jyotiṣa, is that we want to try to take advantage of this. And perhaps a lot of people may not know that Hora Jyotiṣa has an organized methodological system of prediction that is based on observations and experiments. So there is some kind of process to it. Now, whether or not whatever someone checks your Jataka, whether it's true or not, that's a different story. I'm not going to comment on whether it's accurate and all of that. But I just want to impress upon everyone the fact that there is a organized system in place in which this is based off of. Okay. So we were talking about earlier from the perspective of Karma Siddhanta that any phala that we're experiencing now is the result of our past karma that we have done, which we call in many ways prarabdha or adrishta, destiny, whatever you want to call it, right? It is just a result of the past action that is fructifying now. Okay. But here's a very interesting twist on the perspective here. It's not a destiny that is out of our control. Because if prarabdha is just our past action, then our present action that we do now, which we might call purusha prayatna or purushartha, it can overcome our past action because they both are our actions only. The only difference is it's separated in time. Our past actions led to results now. So that means our present actions can counteract what we did in the past because they both are just our actions only. And a translation of a quote from one of the acharyas of Sringeri, Abhinava Vidyatirtha Mahaswaminah, had given once, is that prarabdha or fate cannot be more powerful than one's own present will, because fate itself is a creation of one's own will, right? And there's many examples given in Śāstra of overcoming one's prarabdha. We have the example of Markandeya, who was said to only live, I think, what was it, 16 years or something. And then through his own actions, through his own bhakti towards Parameshwara, he was able to overcome that. So there's many examples that are given like that, that you can change the course of what your prarabdha says by your own present action. And it goes both ways. If you don't do things you're supposed to and neglect to do things you're supposed to, and do things you're not supposed to, then you can also spoil your health. You can also die earlier, etc. Like it goes both ways. You can affect it positively and you can affect it negatively based off your present action. So a couple examples that I really like on this front are the following. So the one on the right is the weather forecast, right? We should understand any prediction made by Jyotiṣa in similar fashion with the weather, right? You want to prepare yourself for something. For example, you want to have some outing on the weekend. It's Saturday today, and yes, you want to go somewhere. You want to go to the park, right? You check the weather forecast. Hey, look, it might be raining at 3 p.m. or something, right? If you have set out to do some action, you want to make sure that you take the proper precautions so that you can do whatever you need to do. If it's going to rain, you're going to, okay, let me go take my umbrella if I need to go somewhere, right? That doesn't mean like, hey, look, it's going to rain. I'm just going to sit at home and not do anything, right? You're not going to sit here out of fear, right? It is simply a prediction that you're using that, hey, look, I should be careful. Therefore, I will take these proper precautions so I can do what I need to do. Now, just because the weather forecast said it's going to rain at 3 p.m. doesn't mean it's actually going to rain at 3 p.m. We don't know, right? There's all the daivam. There's all the things that we cannot forecast. It's our best guess that, hey, look, it might rain. There's 70% chance of rain, whatever the forecast says. But that does not mean it will actually rain. But the purpose of the forecast is just so that we can take the proper precautions when we set out to do something. Hora Jyotiṣa is to be understood in the same way. If there's some dosha, something like that, it doesn't mean don't do it. It means take the proper precautions and in preparation for whatever you're going to do it. Now, that doesn't mean that whatever bad thing that was forecast is actually going to come happen. That is not necessarily the case. As we said in the previous slide, your own present action and your own correct karma that you do now can always overcome your prarabdha. Okay. Next example on the left was given by another of the Sringeri acharyas, Chandrasekhara Bharati Mahaswaminah. And in this, one bhakta had come to the acharya and asked about the same topics, about how do I, overcome my prarabdha and understanding that. And the example the acharya gave is that consider that there is a nail driven into a block of wood, and your goal is to pull the nail out of the block of wood. Okay? Before you start this activity, can you tell me how many times will it take you to pull on the nail for the nail to come out? You don't know, right? The only way that you would know is that if you were the one that hit it in. Okay, I hit it in 10 times, so it's probably going to take me 10 times to pull it out. But I don't know how many times it was hit in. I don't know the composition of it. I don't know if it's balsa wood or oak wood or something else, because the friction and all of that will make an effect. There's all of this prarabdha, there's all of this daivam, things that we don't know, that we don't understand, that prevents us from knowing before we even start how many times it will take us to pull the nail out of the piece of wood. But if our goal is to pull it out of the piece of wood, then are you going to sit here before you even start and not do anything? If your goal is to pull it out, you're going to keep pulling it until it comes out, right? So that is example that the Acharya gave. If you set out to do some action, something you want to study, you want to earn a degree, you want to pass an exam, whatever it is, right? Just because the result doesn't come immediately or the second time or the third time, that doesn't mean give up. If that is your ultimate goal, then you keep doing it until it fructifies. Because you don't know everything else that has happened, that all the daivam, everything else that is present there that you know exactly, I'm going to get it on my first try, I'm going to get it on my second try. You don't know that. But if that is your goal, you must keep doing it until you achieve it. And so these are two examples that I really like that really tie this down to our day-to-day experience. Okay, so with this in mind, we can come back to these questions and we won't answer it, but I would like everyone to think about it. Based off everything we have discussed, that what is the purpose of Jyotiṣa? Where did it come from? What science of timekeeping now, and all of that, and how do you overcome your prarabdha? What is the connection between past action and present result? All of that. Take some time to think amongst yourselves afterwards about the answers to these questions, and hopefully that will give some insight and better understanding for us. And before we wrap it up here, I'd like to share a shloka from the Dakshinamurti Sotram, which is quite interesting. Bijasyantarivangkuro jagatidam prang nirvikalpam punaha maya kalpita desha kala kalana vaichitriya chitrikritam maya viva vijrumbhayatyapi mahayogi vayasvechaya tasmai Shri Guru Murtaye namayidam Shri Dakshinamurtaye. We offer salutations to this Dakshinamurti. And you can read the translation here, but the thing that I found quite interesting here is Maya Kalpita Desha Kala Kalana Vaichitra Chitri Kritam. This entire universe that we see, it is all kalpita. It is all just a fabrication of Maya, of this time and space and all of that. So we spend all this time talking about Jyotiṣa and your time and place and all that, but ultimately, once you reach that point of moksha, right, that true understanding of this reality, all of this desha, kala, Jyotiṣa, everything is just Maya Kalpita. And here are some of the sources from this presentation. Of course, from Lakada Maharshi's Vedāṅga Jyotiṣa, Varahamihira's Panchasindhantika, and some of the various conversations and upadeshas given by various acharyas. And with that, we will close the presentation for now. Dhanyavada. Any questions?
Dhanyavad, Siddharth. I had one question. Thank you. This was very informative. And I really like the idea of prarabdha and how it's can be understood as our own will, our own actions, and can be overcome with the same. But what I was wondering is, I mean, the human condition is we're never going to know what our past prarabdha is, right? But um, how can we take it in a positive manner, not knowing that? What is the benefit of not knowing that?
So there's an example I remember one of my acharyas telling me that, yes, please also, please turn on your cameras. It would be nice if we can have more of a discussion as we're doing this. So that the example that was given is that, when a new jiva is going to take birth, right, in the garbha of the mother, there's a point in which all its purva samskara, I mean, we carry our purva samskaras with us, but it is said that in one shastra that, you have the jiva actually has the memory of all previous karma, but then they forget it in the garbha. Because if we remembered every single thing and everything that we've done for how many janmas that we have taken, it would be way too much for us to to handle. So in a way, ignorance is bliss here, that we don't have to worry too much about every single thing that we have ever done is is one way to think of it. The other thing is, especially when we're going through something that is not conducive. For example, someone is going through a sickness that is very hard, right? It's very easy to get down to the path to think like in that situation that, oh no, what papa karma have I done? I must be such a big papi that I'm going through such a big sickness now and all. That's very easy to go down that train of thought. But there's a very beautiful mantra that in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad that Mahaperiyava gave this very beautiful example and explanation for. And basically, what it says is that consider that whatever roga, whatever sickness that you're going through now, you should think of it as a tapas. Because, when you have a fever, right, your body heats up. To think of that as you're doing, Panchagni tapas or something like that. And if you have that change of mindset, that you simply look at whatever whatever karma or whatever phala that you're going through now, sickness or whatever, you think of that as a tapas, you will get much punya from it. That is, whatever you're going through, if you treat it as a tapas, then that is the best way to overcome it. That, these days no one does any tapas. This is not Kruta Yoga where everyone was was a tapasvi and all that, right? So it is to think of it as Bhagavan's method for giving us the opportunity to do tapas. And so if you just change it, have that mindset, right? We talk about as prasada buddhi and karma yoga, that whatever result that you've been given now, treat it as prasada from Bhagavan and to endure it, and that will help you get across the result. So it's a very beautiful mindset shift that I found in the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad.
If I may, this is Badrinath. Namaste, sir. And thank you very much. Very informative. I felt it's very quite short actually in half hour, right? I thought it was getting a lot more. In fact, I know maybe there's another session too. I heard that it'll be a session, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. So I think the question I have is, the one thing you said, someone is sick, right? Some problem. Depending on whom you ask, you get it right. Depending on how kind of a thing. So I think maybe you all answered is part of discussion. I think my question is, then which one, how do you move forward, right? Because, right, like you said, if you're a doctor kind of a thing, the homeopathy, everyone has a different solution for that, right? Okay. So how do what could be my next step? Which one I should take, right, which direction? That's what I just want to know. Thank you, sir.
So in regards of all the different possible causes, right? In the end, all we're doing is treating the symptoms that we have. We cannot remove the original cause. If you're going through the karma, the phala now, you cannot get out of it. You must go through it. But you can treat the symptoms, right? If you're sick, you cannot not get sick. But the only thing you must endure it. You must go through that karma, therefore for that to be exhausted. But you can treat the symptoms. If you have a fever, you can take acetaminophen or paracetamol or whatever you call it, right? If you have some graha dosha, you can do the dosha nivarana yajna, or that's prescribed for it. You can treat the symptoms for it, and that's certainly something that we should do. But whatever you're going through, you must go through it by karma siddhanta.
Right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
I just wanted to chime in. So first of all, like a fantastic presentation. Thank you so much for taking the time. And I too excitedly wait for the second session. So one thing that I remember one of my family friends telling me in along the vein of prasada buddhi is that so if you think about all the ashramas in life, there's this very naive when we're first introduced to the concepts of Vedanta philosophy, that the knee-jerk reaction is to okay, let's just escape to sannyas ashrama. That seems really nice. Like you don't have to engage with anyone and go through all the toils seemingly of life. But then one of my family friends, as a rebuttal, told me okay, but some of the biggest tapasya happens in grihastashram, for instance. It seems very at all like from everywhere, you have like all these different situations and circumstances to navigate, whether it's like domestic life, whether it's professional, um, establishing your own trajectory for your own path forward in your life and what you choose to do with all the learnings from your brahmacharya ashram. So a lot of what our modern day thinking could be of like tapasya happens in that grihastha. So I just wanted to share that and then also see if you had any more thoughts on that. But I also had another question. I'm sorry, I'm taking up a lot of space and time.
No worries. That is absolutely true that Shastra says Grihastha is the greatest of all ashramas because it is by Grihastha that the entire samajam, the entire society is upheld. It is the Grihastha and the Grihini that are the ones that feed everyone. They're the ones that generate the wealth. They're the ones that keep society running, and that means keep dharma running. So it's absolutely the best of the ashramas. Now, of course, not most of, because the thing is, like you said, for the ones who are just introduced to Vedanta, they'll think, oh, let me run away to the Himalayas and just be a tapasi, right? Your body will run away there. Where will your mind be if you're not ready? Your mind will be in the Jagat only. Your body will be in the Himalayas. You'll be still thinking about everything that's going on in the world. Oh, what is my friend eating? Is my mother eating? My son eating? All of this, your thoughts will be just in Vyavahara. So unless you're ready, until you're to the point that you're ready, you're a paripakva sadhaka. Running away to the Himalayas will not do you anything. And there's a beautiful example here in the Yoga Vasishtha. It's perhaps not as well known of a grantha, but it was Valmiki's other major contribution to us. And it is a conversation between Vasishtha and Vishwamitra and Rama. This is when Vishwamitra comes before he takes Rama and Lakshmana off to protect the yajna. And the conversation that happens here is that Rama, he's still a pretty young, in his teenage age time, right? So having been introduced to all of this and seeing the suffering of the world, he wants to run away. And like, what's the point of doing anything and all of that? And so Vasishtha gives this entire grantha, this entire Upadesha to Rama about Vedanta. And that's the same thing that, you cannot run away. And that is Upadesha given to Bhagavan by Vasishtha as part of Bhagavan's Leela, right? And then the whole Ramayana unfolds after that. And so just one of the many examples that we see that, running away, physically running away doesn't do anything. You must be ready here to do that. You had another question?
Yes. So from kind of a computational perspective, I from my limited knowledge of Jyotiṣaśtra, like I know that a lot of our classical shastras and siddhantas and karanas, the corpus is very heavily like based with like all of the latitude, longitude, and like kala metrics of either their specific time and most definitely place. And then there's the concept of like what actually is a yojana and how do we measure that? So then how do we in like the modern day and age, like from like a computational perspective, not have faith, but like how perhaps I don't know how to ask this question in a very nice way, but what happens to all the perhaps calculation error? How do we explain that? And then how do we go forth with a lot of the graha calculations or like jataka calculations?
So you had mentioned yojana, that reminded me of something. We'll talk about this in the second session a little bit more, but with yojana, that's a great example because depending on which shastra you read, there's a slightly different definition that's given. It's kind of like an overloaded term in a way. One definition will be something closer to what we today will say like 8 miles. Another one will be something closer to 9 miles. It just depends on which shastra. Puranas will use one convention, and then Jyotiṣa will use a different convention. Something else will use a different convention. So it's definitely a hard one to figure out. And part of the answer to that would be is that's the entire reason our shastras are not meant to be read by ourselves. They must be studied under the guru for the guru to tell you what is the circumstance you should understand what you're reading. Because if we try to read it ourselves, we'll get super confused by where what is coming from. Now, in terms of calculations today, It's actually a pretty easy thing. Let me pull up a website to show you. Let me share my screen. So I just pulled up just one of the common Panchanga websites that you'll have, like the Panchang, My Panchang, all of this. If you zoom in here to the logo, based on NASA's JPL data for accuracy, you see that. All the major Panchanga calculations today are actually based off the computations of the celestial positions of all the bodies and everything that NASA produces. So we don't have to worry about any inaccurate, like we are a lot more accurate today because we have the technology to be more accurate.
I think I was going off of the very, very naive endeavor of like taking one of the Karanas or Siddhantas, like Siddhanta Shiromani or something, and trying to, as an exercise, do some of these calculations.
Yeah. It's definitely a fun exercise, but we definitely have better methods today in terms of the technology of what we have. But that's not to discount what they did. It's amazing how far they got back in the day without the technology that we have today, and they were still able to do that.
I have a
Thank
one
you so
quick
much.
question. Sorry to interrupt. Sometimes, like if we know your future and if it's little bit negative, then sometimes it's create a fear. So how to overcome from that fear and just focus on your karma?
Hmm.
And when it is about like yourself or especially about your kids or anything, then
Yeah,
yeah.
that's definitely a very hard one. This question reminds me of something that one sadhak had asked Swami Chinmayananda Saraswati. And the answer given by this acharya was that, we waste our mental energies in regrets over a dead past, worries about an uncertain future, and excitements in the present, right? It is really just a mindset shift for all three of these, that past, present, or future, that, whatever karma, whatever's to be coming, it will come. It won't stop from happening. But the best thing that we can do now, as we mentioned earlier, is that if we do good karma with the good bhava, the good mindset now, that is the best thing that we can, that's within our power right now, right? And if we treat everything as prasada buddhi, everything is meant to happen for a reason. And it is, outside of our power. And at least personally and from experience, that when you start trying to if you try to grab on so tightly, that's where their fear comes from. But if you're able to just, whatever Bhagavan wants from me, that is what will happen. And Bhagavan knows best. I don't know best. Bhagavan is the one that's the karma phaladata, who is doing all this computations and calculations for everyone and everything. I barely know anything in terms of all of this, right? So I think it's just that having that bhakti bhava towards Bhagavan, that it is Bhagavan's wish what will happen, and who am I to say something about it? But it is a very hard one to get out of, especially when it's people close to us, our kids or close family members, and when they're struggling or you fear for them. It is, yeah, for sure, a very easy thing to say, but it's very difficult to follow through with. And that's where the entire chitta shuddhi comes from, and having to go through karma yoga, karma as with the karma yoga bhava.
And one more question, like whenever you are doing something, your inner self guide, like do this or don't do this most of the time. But sometimes it's happened like we did not follow our intuition and we just follow what the surroundings are doing or whatever they are doing or they are telling. And then finally the things happen that what our intuitions say. So, so how to come out from that karma or that guilt? Like we did not listen to our own heart or our own Bhagwan that is recite us. So it happens sometime with me, and I don't know how to overcome that guilt.
Yeah. So the answer that I had a very similar question and asked one of my acharyas, and the answer given was, the first thing is to admit that you have done something that you should not have done. I think just that admittance is a very first step. I think humans in general find it very difficult to just get to that point of being able to freely admit that, I did something that I should not have done, and I will face whatever consequences that will come of it, because I am the one who has ordered it to happen by my own actions, right? And I mean, next there's also, Shastra prescribes prayashchitta karma and all of this to help us, overcome and to get over this kind of situations, that something to do for us to manage our guilt. It's not going to take away the fruit. Whatever fruit will have to come will come, but it will help us clean our mind so that we can be better prepared for the future.
But no matter how we will do some kind of mistake, right, in future also. So no matter how much precaution we will keep, but then again the fear comes, okay, what happen if I do the mistake and something like that. So
Yes. It's a long journey for all of us as jivas. It takes a lot of sadhana to get to the point that we can let go of our doership of the actions, right? And to leave that to Bhagavan. So there's no easy answer.
yeah, so just let it go and do the bhakti bhav
Sadhana is the only
is
answer.
sadhana. Yeah, that's true.
Abhyasa
Dhanyavad.
vairagyena cha krishyate, Bhagavan says in Gita. It's through abhyasa, through practice, and through vairagya, developing that sense of like, I am not the doer. I am not actually affected by anything.
Correct.
And the first part of that shloka is interesting too, because asamshayam mahabaho manodurnigraham chalam. There is no doubt about this, Partha, that the mind is the most difficult thing to control. Bhagavan admits that to Arjuna. So that is very much true.
A quick
Dhanyavad.
question, sir. Sorry, yeah.
Hmm.
Okay. I mean, you've been an aeronautical engineer. I'm just wondering about your personal. How did you take this path of Jyotiṣa and kind of a thing? Just curious. How do you balance that, right? Because you're more a Vedantic Upanishad journey you're doing, right? In parallel to, I'm sure NASA will be working 24/7 probably there. Just curious, actually, right? In case, yeah, you can.
Sure. So, I mean, I've always been interested in the space science since I was a little kid. I can share a quick story. Perhaps I didn't know it at the time. So, my Ishta Devata is Anjaneya Swami, and as a kid, the Ramayana kathas were my favorites, and the ones I loved the best were when it was Bala Anjaneya, when he was just a newborn, waking up, seeing the mango, the sun through the tree, thinking it's a mango, and flying out to space to grab it. That was my favorite, and I think now looking back, I think that might have been why I went down this path of loving space science and understanding that. But there's very much an overlap between my, the Shastric side and my Western study side of this. The perspective that you get from space shows how small we are in the vastness of this cosmos. There's this effect that a lot of the astronauts, so I work at the Johnson Space Center in Houston, so this is where the home of the astronaut corps is. So we see astronauts all the time in the cafeterias, just walking the hallways, etc. And so what they often say is that there's this effect that when you're on orbit and you're looking back at the Earth, you don't see any of the borders, any of these kalpita, all of these fabricated divisions and things that we fight so much about. All of that disappears when you look at the Earth from a different perspective. And so it is partly that trying to get to that point of being able to stop seeing the Bheda in the world, right? Which is exactly what Vedanta talks about, right? It is the same thing. The other aspect is in trying to explore the universe, right? It is also a sadhana in a way. It is also a puja to Bhagavan. Because look, what is this Jagat? In the Vishnu-Sahasranama, it starts with Vishwam Vishnu Vashatkaraha. Not even Vishnu, Vishwam. This universe is Bhagavan's form itself. In Rudra Lagunyasa Dhyanam, Apatalana Bhastalanta Bhuvana Brahmandama Vispurata, Jyotiṣ Lingamoli Vilasat Purnenduvantamrutehi. This and all the lokas from Patala to Nabha or Brahmaloka. The entire Jagat is one shining Jyoti Spartika Lingam, right? So exploring this universe is trying to understand Bhagavan. It's not a separate, different thing to me. It is the same. And in terms of like why I got interested in Jyotiṣa, so my specific area of focus in my work is called navigation. That is trying to figure out where spacecraft, rovers, whatever vehicle that you have, where is it and when is it? Trying to understand place and time. And that is essentially what I do. How do you know where your spacecraft is and where does it need to go and how does it do to get there? And so it should be fairly clear Kala and Desha, how that tie in from Jyotiṣa and what I do professionally. And being straddling these two worlds, trying to understand the Western sciences and then also Indic knowledge systems. This is where that tie-in comes from for me.
Understand. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you. Hari Om.
I have one more question, actually. Thank you. I want to ask the same question that last one asked. Like, I'm also inclined toward this, all the Sanskrit and all this stuff, but I don't know, being a electronics engineer with my career, which is the best way to incorporate into my career as well as like whatever I'm doing right now.
To incorporate Samskritam?
No, like I know the binary system and all this stuff is done by our routine and all this stuff. But I want to do the further research on that area. So how to start? Like
find a guru.
That is the toughest.
Samskrita Bharati has a great network to leverage for this.
Okay.
Our Shastras discourage individual study for a reason, because it's very easy to get lost and misunderstand and misconstrue things. The study under a guru is very much insisted upon for this reason, so that we are guided properly. There's only so much you can get from going to don't go to Wikipedia, please. But there's only so much you can get from just reading online and yourself if you don't have the context from it. So definitely, please utilize the Samskrita Bharati or any other organization network and find a guru to teach.
Okay.
For that matter, I just want to thank Samskrit Bharati, right? I mean, I've been part of the journey for the last 3 to 4 years. The amazing services they're doing, the volunteers, Govindaji, everyone else, right? I mean, I can't name a lot of people, right? Who are teaching us. I agree with Siddhaji and what he's saying, absolutely, right? I mean, and I'm very much grateful to the sessions they're conducting, right? The service they are doing.
Yes.
I have one question. So I'm a primary care physician and I have just, also studied Ayurveda, and Jyotishi is a part of it. So being in US, how do I explain this to my Caucasian patients? And is there any particular information that you can share or some links that I can give my patients when I refer them? Especially referrals are to Jyotish if they want a child and they're older and they're going through infertility treatment.
I am not the person to give an answer to this. My interests in Jyotiṣa are from the academic perspective and understanding the science and philosophy and the mathematics behind it. But I am not a Jyotishika. I don't know how to do the set predictions and all of that. And so I don't have an answer to that question.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. It was a wonderful presentation and very succinct. And along with the Vedanta philosophy, it makes a lot of sense.
All right. So we're about a minute past our time that we usually end our session. I will say that if for those who have more questions, please join us in the next session. And I think I speak for everyone when I say that it's such a pleasure to listen to you, Siddharth Mahodaya, because we have learned so much today. And we love to see members of our young professionals group to have so much knowledge to share. So that's why we created this platform. of SNYP. So SNYP, again, for those who don't know, is Samskritam Network of Young Professionals. It's a new sub-organization of Yuva Vibhaga, and it is created especially for young professionals navigating life after college who are maybe already working or going on to master's or PhD. This group offers a community, and for those who are busy, it's kind of the idea is for a light touch engagement. That's why, as you can see, this session on Jyotiṣaśāstra, it is a very kind of a small portion of it. It's very like a small portion that's digestible and understandable, and then we'll kind of address the other things in next sessions. It's in a way to keep Samskritam alive in your daily life. And if you have anybody in mind who would like to join SNYP, please email yuva@spusa.org so they can join the email group and to get the links for next time. So in the spirit of light touch engagement, Siddharth Mahodaya talked about the objective or the problem that Jyotiṣaśastra addresses. And next time he'll go more in depth on the Siddhanta side, the mathematics or calculative side of Jyotiṣa. So please stay tuned for that. It will take place maybe 4 to 6 weeks from now, and we'll send out an email on the exact date and time. It'll always be on a Saturday. So please stay tuned for that. And so with that, I thank everybody for joining, and I'll end with the Shanti Mantra.
So can we get the recording of this session or?
So
I
Sweetie
joined
Mahodaya,
late actually. Yeah, that's why.
sure. Can you please put your email in the chat? I'm not sure
Okay.
when I will have access for this recording, but I think it should be possible. And maybe I'll send it out to everyone. But just for now, can I have your email in the chat?
Just 1 second. Yeah.
Shanti Mantra bata. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinah Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschit Dukkha Bhag Bhavet. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Dhanyavadaha milamaha.
Dhanyawad.
Dhanyawad.